Well, good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon or good evening, depends when you're listening, of course. This is the Fueling Growth podcast. My name's Phil Seaver and I'm the host. And I'm joined here in the office today for the podcast by Martyn King, who I have to say is still Britain's best boss and Managing Director of Fuel Communications. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Phil. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
I'm not going to let that go.
That particular clip is still in my downstairs toilet.
There you go. There you go. Now, Martyn, thank you for co-hosting this for me yet again. The powers that be always say that we're not allowed in here on our own. So who today have you got with us as a guest in the studio?
Well, look, I'm really pleased to have secured the time of Mr. Paul Critchley this morning. I am proper excited, actually, to be talking about mission-led growth. As you know, the Fueling Growth podcast is all about different routes to growth and everything else. But I have had the great pleasure of working with Paul for everything's 3 or 4 years, but in this case, probably 5 or 6 years on some, and learned a hell of a lot about mission-led growth. So I'm very excited to have Paul here before he embarks upon a new role. So he's nice and relaxed and ready to tell us some pearls of wisdom.
Well, he looks very tanned sitting there in the corner, I have to say. So, Paul, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Pleased to be here. Hello, everyone. My name's Paul, and I've got lots of years of experience of leading organisations that are mission-led, particularly in the social enterprise community, but also in other sectors as well. So I'm really pleased to be able to share some of that experience today.
Great. I mean, look, the one thing we're going to talk about is mission-led growth. Now, I want you to imagine, and it shouldn't be too hard, I know nothing about this, okay? So let's start at the beginning. Give us a bit of an intro into what you perceive to be mission-led growth.
For me, mission is all about thinking about your organisation or your business, or feeling your organisation and your business in a slightly deeper sense. So yes, there are the tasks, there are the logistics, there's money, there's cash flow. But what mission-led does is it allows you to feel and think about those things in a deeper way. And that's because it asks you about the why. Why are you doing those things? Not just what are you doing? What's the impact you're having? And how can that improve something as a result of you doing it?
Okay. Well, look, let's, I mean, that gives us a bit of an overview. I mean, is it, I don't think you would be able to say this, or I'm sure you wouldn't say this, but you're clearly, I understand, an expert in this field. You have lots of experience in it. So you're the person that can really give us a proper insight into it. That's fair, isn't it? Would you say that's fair, Martyn?
Yeah, completely fair and with flair. Now, Paul's done, I've had the pleasure of witnessing it from an advisory perspective, if you like, working with Paul on some mission-led stuff, and it's been some real success stories in there. Yeah.
Okay, right. So we know we've got an expert in the room. You are, of course, an expert. I'm not an expert in anything, I don't think. So other than talking, but let's start with a nice, easy question to get us into it. Why is it important, you would say, for organisations to have mission-led as sort of central to their growth?
I think a mission in an organisation gives it a real purpose. So one of the things that business leaders will really value in their organisation is having a sense of collective, a sense that everybody's with them, a sense that they can perhaps ask at various times for teams and individuals to go above and beyond. And I think having a mission that everybody believes in, something that you're trying to achieve together, really does give you that cohesion. It gives you a sense of a backdrop, if you like, to say, again, back to that, why are we all doing this? Are we really all on the same page here? And I think in addition to that, it allows business leaders to sort of step back sometimes from the real, the difficulty and the time pressures that can be involved in leading organizations, and just take a minute to sort of be, I suppose, reassured that they're doing some of the right things for the right reason, and not just doing them because it's the next task on the list. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel, I mean, it's hard not to be cynical about some of this stuff, but I think you come at it clearly from a professional position, and I can see the real benefit. Now, you touched on something there, and you said about business leaders. I want you to imagine I'm a business leader, call it captain of industry, if you like. If I wanted to do something like that and embed something into my organization, how do I go about it?
I think the first thing you need to do is you need to talk to people. You can't have a mission-led organization where it's one person leading things and just telling other people, what to do and how to do it. That's an autocracy, and that's the way businesses are run sometimes. But it's not mission-led growth. I think what you need to do is you need to engage and empower people. There's that adage around, you don't employ good people and tell them what to do. You employ them and you listen to them, and you listen to the experience they bring, and you listen to the ways in which they can help the business achieve what it needs to achieve. So I think the first thing I would do is I would start to engage in the teams and say, why is it we're all here? What are we trying to really achieve here? And ask that a couple of times. So go beyond well, I'm here because I do the finance, and I'm here because I do the HR. It's beyond that. It's well, why? What's the end game? I think a lot of organizations probably start this journey with, directors in a room trying to come up with a strap line. And maybe there's some merit to that, but actually that's not a route to embed exactly what needs to be embedded into your organization. It might be a starting point, but very often for organizations, it can be an end point as well. We've defined the mission and that's all good. So we're leaving it there.
I guess in a way, well, you touched on it there, but it's the old adage of, don't get a dog and bark yourself, isn't it? And but it's interesting you said about strap lines, actually, because I'm a big believer in this concept that sort of people that own businesses tend to come up with something that is somewhat of a mission statement and kind of, go away for an away day somewhere nice in a nice hotel, come up with something and go to everyone and present it, say, this is what we are now. And then they just put that document in the bottom drawer and it gathers dust and they never revisit it again.
Yeah, I've worked with loads of organizations who see that as we must have a mission or a vision or something in place. That's important. Some of it from a box ticking exercise, or you go into the organization and you'll start there because what from our perspective, what we want to know is about mission, vision, culture, and those kind of things are really important so that you can articulate what the organization's got to say. And yeah, I've been into plenty of organizations where I'll ask the question, that sounds great. If I go and walk out onto the shop floor in a minute and ask everybody what that is, how many of them will give me the right answer? Then it falls down. And look, the intentions are good, but it's about that sort of start point of properly engaging with people and bringing people into the process.
And have you found, Paul, that when organizations that you've worked with on this sort of thing, presumably buy-in from the team is really, really important? I mean, do you ever get situations where you get pushback from that team and it's hard to sort of get them to accept it, or
of course,
get on board?
Of course. And I think what is the point? What are we trying to achieve with a mission and with an organization that might be trying to lead through mission? What you're trying to do is you're trying to engage the whole team and you're trying to get that cohesion, as I said previously. So, and that's not an overnight thing. You get people with time pressures, you get people with different views. I've certainly worked in organizations where, the mission might be about, tackling some form of inequality. And, I think missions are probably quite good when they're quite broad, because you don't get that feeling of, oh, we achieved the mission this year, let's try something else. You've got kind of always got that challenge on, which is great. But actually, you've then got a debate internally about, well, how do you tackle that inequality then? Where do you go first? Where are you going to have your biggest impact? How are you going to make the best steps towards your mission? And that's where you can get some of the pushback is, making sure people are aligned at that more granular level. But actually, just by having that conversation, you're starting to embed the thinking around mission into the organization anyway. So as a leader, I wouldn't be, shying away from those conversations. I'd be encouraging those and saying, well, what is the highest priority around this then? How is it that we can have our best impact?
And what are the other challenges you would say, other than that? What are the other challenges with mission-led growth?
I think very often it can seem that trying to do something which might have a purely mission-driven aspect to it could be seen as detrimental either to time, to the bottom line, it might be a case of clients and some clients taking higher priority than others. And it could be purely a cost thing. Well, we'd like to go and do that to help a certain cause or a certain something, but we haven't got the money or the wherewithal to do it right now. So I think there's plenty of challenges. I think it's about for organisations achieving the things that they can achieve and not beating themselves up about, we didn't, weren't able to solve world hunger or whatever it is. I think it's about trying to achieve the things you can achieve, and making that a really proud moment for yourselves.
Can I ask more of a personal question? How long have you been in this industry or in this sector doing this?
On and off, about 15 to 20 years.
Okay. And during that period, do you think you've seen a change in attitude from businesses? Because you touched a minute ago on the idea that, businesses investing in this. You touched on sort of the finances or the commercial side. Businesses are in business to make money most of the time, let's be honest. Is the attitude changing, would you say, over that period of time?
I think the attitude's changing from business. There's a lot of businesses now that take the ESG agenda quite seriously. They want to, make sure they have, a hold of their environmental and their social impacts. But more than that, I think actually the workforce is taking this more seriously. I think the workforce is seeing that actually there's a real benefit to working for an organisation that's got a slightly deeper purpose than just making money. And I think in a society and in an economy where most organisations are fighting for resource and fighting for good people, I think having a really strong mission-led organisation can give you that little bit of an edge when it comes to recruitment and retention as well.
And would you say that's one of the obvious rewards of going down this route?
Yeah, I would. Definitely. I think it's that there are some studies that show that productivity goes up when people have a really strong belief in the organisation and what it's trying to achieve. But definitely, I think, if you've got an organisation where people feel empowered, they feel listened to, they feel that the job they do makes a real difference in some way, shape or form, then you've got a better workforce, and that better workforce is going to be more stable. It's going to reduce your recruitment costs. And it's going to give you those productivity gains, as I said. I
guess there's something in the idea that you don't always get the best out of staff just because you pay them more money. It seems to be a slightly old-fashioned. You've really got to look after them a bit better. And a phrase I came across recently was, people wanted to have better businesses, and I think there's something in that. I mean, it's a big holistic point. But the idea of just having a business that wants to do a little bit better, rather than it just sort of going, well, we've got to increase the bottom line, or we've got to do this, or we've got to do that. Slightly more holistic.
Yeah, look, one of the biggest challenges when I'm out there speaking to clients at the moment is all around recruitment and retention. We've had loads of conversations around that. I've seen you perform well in that space because you've got a good story to tell. You can articulate it. And again, if you come back to those sort of more cosmetic, shall we say, missions, if you can't look around the organisation and feel it in the organisation, then your recruitment efforts are going to be a lot less effective than they ordinarily might be. I suppose also, I think with the more mission-led groups. You really do see successful recruitment campaigns, and they have a lot less headaches. I'm not saying they don't have headaches, because it's bloody tough, but those organisations who are putting that first are really winning from that perspective. So mission really important.
I guess in a way. I mean, I jokingly mentioned Britain's best boss at the beginning of this, and that was a connection with.
I'm still embarrassed about it.
Your appearance in national newspapers, because a fuel of you're now doing a 4-day week.
Yep.
Is that something that you would consider to be part of your mission? And Paul, as a follow up to that, is that something you perceive as a positive? So Martyn first, and then Paul.
Yeah. So look, our mission is to fuel growth for our clients and for our team. So quite naturally, we look at how we can keep our team to be the best they can be and look after them as best we possibly can and enable them to grow. So we'd, flexible working we'd have introduced before the pandemic, and hybrid working afterwards. A natural sort of roll on from that was looking at 4-day week and how we can make or enable people to be a bit sharper, a bit less stressed and more creative. So flows straight out of our.
No, I'm not trying to shoehorn in a reference here, but Paul, is that something you would perceive as being something mission led?
Absolutely. I think in order generally to be a good leader in a business, but in order to have a mission led business, it's mostly about the values of you as a person and the values that you try to encourage and instill in the business. And I suppose the one that springs to mind most of all through that is you've got to be authentic. I think those, as Martyn said, those more cosmetic mission statements where an organization might say it's trying to do some good things, that doesn't ring true to the workforce if actually their experience is the organization isn't very good to them. Why are we trying to do something for the community or for whoever it might be, but we can't even look after our own workforce? So I think that authenticity has got to come from the top, and it's got to be something which is embedded in the organization. You almost got to put your own sort of house in order and put your own people first before you can really think about achieving something greater.
I think it's perfect bit of advice. I mean, just on that, and I don't wish to put you on the spot here, but have you got any tips that you think that businesses maybe could look at in terms of mission-led growth?
Yeah, well, I certainly think they've got to walk the walk. So leaders in those organizations, if they say they want to, have a think about, could we have something that's a bit more deeper, a bit more meaningful for our organization? As I said before, talk to your teams about that, talk to those, and then think about the sort of frameworks and mechanisms that you can put in place to embed it. So some of the things I've used before are things like ensuring that you've got some of your your business planning and your objectives as an organization include some of that mission stuff. It's not just an add-on, it's something that's right in the heart of the business. You can then flow those objectives down through to individuals if you so choose, and you can make individuals feel closely linked to that mission because they've now got objectives to achieve around that mission. And I think you can do a similar thing with values. Actually, in an organization, you can do some really good work about trying to find out which values you aspire to show, as a team, as an organization. Again, you shouldn't have a small group of people doing that. That should be an organization-wide conversation. And then you can put some measurement in and say, are we actually as good as our word? Are we making decisions according to our mission, according to our values? And I think that seems to work, really well from a practical perspective.
I think if you think about it from that sort of mission perspective, what I've seen Paul do really well is you have the mission, and therefore in comes the culture, the values, and then by definition the behaviours.
Mm-hmm.
And those things start to, once that all starts to move in tune with each other, then it accelerates that mission.
I actually think that I've learned a tremendous amount in the 20 minutes that we've been going, and I completely buy into the concept of it. I think I was probably there anyway. But the one thing I feel that you said there that was really important, that was my takeaway, was the fact that it's not an add-on. It's something that you embed into the culture of a business, and I think we would have a better business and economy if all businesses started to think a little bit like that. So I think it's probably only fair to say that it's been a hugely interesting 20 minutes. I'm very, very grateful for your time for coming in today. So Paul, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. And Martyn, it's always great when you bring a good guest in. Not that you've brought a bad guest in. This sounds terrible, doesn't it?
No, just Steve.
There was that once with Steve, yes, yeah. Of course. But no, thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming in and sparing the time. I hope that the people that are listening listen to this and maybe learn something from it and maybe take it into their business as well. So, gents, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.